Hey everybody, it's Caesar with the Local Service Podcast, and today we're going to talk about the 3 reasons why your website hosting matters. And in this particular episode, I think it's going to sound like I'm complaining a lot, but it's one of those things that it's not a problem. Your website hosting is not a problem until something goes wrong. And for a lot of businesses, a lot of personal websites, a lot of smaller websites, it's really not going to be a problem at all. But in my experience, in the last 3 years of running Symphony Advertising on my own, but also just experience throughout, I don't know, at this point, it's like 10 plus years of creating websites, building websites, hosting websites. And as I manage more under, one umbrella, it's even more obvious that web hosting matters. And so what I like to do in this episode is episode 20. I'd like to break down a couple examples of when web hosting really, really, really mattered, and also a couple reasons why you should get web hosting or why you shouldn't get good web hosting, and explain what is it? Why do I need it? Do I need it? Does it work? Does it not work? Do I need to pay for it? Do I need to not pay for it? So let's dive right in. So to begin with, why would you need web hosting? Before that, what even is web hosting? So let's just be not as technical as we can be, but just as simple as we can be. Okay, so there is a website is actual files. It's actual images, links, text, pictures, the way it's laid out. Those exist in a database somewhere. Okay, that database somewhere is your web hosting. There are physical files somewhere that it pulls from. They don't just magically virtually exist. Yes, it is virtual, but they physically exist somewhere. That's why there's servers everywhere. If you didn't know, okay, and so most people aren't going to buy their own server and deal with all the infrastructure in order to get something online. Most people, most businesses are going to hire or pay for the service of renting. Basically, you're renting space for another company because you don't want to deal with it. Like, you don't want to deal with the infrastructure of getting your stuff online. It's just too much work. It's much easier to rent an apartment or to buy a home that's already done than for you to build it from scratch and make sure everything works with it all the time without fault. And so because those files actually exist somewhere and they need to go somewhere, that is what web hosting is. And so for you to have your website online, it has to live in this hosting platform, and it has to connect with a domain. Those are the 2 things you need in order to make a website live. So like whether you're using Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, Webflow, GoDaddy sites, Google sites, they all have these 2 combinations. Some things to point out is that with some of these hosting platforms, sometimes you don't specifically pay for hosting. So for some examples are Wix and Squarespace. You're going to pay them monthly, and you're not necessarily buying the hosting from them. You're buying the web design tool and management per se, in a way, and it's a lot more affordable, but within that price is the hosting. Like, you simply cannot exist without hosting. And then the domain is always like $12 somewhere, whether it's, again, with GoDaddy, Wix, Namecheap, Google Domains. Like, there's tons of different vendors out there, but more likely than not, actually 100% likely that you have hosting and you have domain. And so what are reasons? So that is what hosting is. If you have a website that is live, you're paying for hosting somewhere. It could be either really cheap. I've seen it as affordable as, $20 a year, or it can be a little bit more costly, which can be, $55 a month. Or if your website's like really big and it requires a lot of space and requires a lot of resources for it to load fast, for it to be technically sound, you're going to pay $125 a month. That's like on the lower end. Like, if you have a really, really busy site, right, with all these pages and all these products, then it's going to cost you a lot more. It could be in thousands of dollars. But for our intent and purposes, we're just talking about local businesses or small businesses, however you want to frame it. And okay, so now that we know what web hosting is, who needs web hosting? Okay, so like I mentioned before, everybody needs web hosting, but only some companies or small businesses, or any business for that matter, or any website for that matter, there's a scale, right? There is a pendulum. You can be on the lower end where it's more of, hey, I just need hosting to put something up. I don't necessarily need the high security. I don't need the daily backups. I don't need the restore options. I don't need, I don't need the Lamborghini of web hosting. I just need something to put this message out. There's that side of thing. And then there's the other side of thing where it's like, hey, I have a membership portal with finance information on the back end, with confidential information on the back end that has 100,000 users per minute, that is in all these different countries, that I do need to simultaneously need to restore or backup or have a different based off of region. I need to show a different type, different language. So it's just basically more complicated, less complicated. That's one way to think about it. But another way to think about it is like, if you are just hosting a site that is just, let's just say it's like a soccer club that you and your friends are a part of, and on this page you just put the schedule. Like, let's just say it's super simple, 1-person team, just want the schedule out there so I can send to all my teammates, and all they gotta do is load it and it's there. That way they don't have to, I don't know, carry a piece of paper around, like whatever that solution is. Like that, in that case, it's like, all right, there's no need to get the crazy hosting or the good hosting. Let's not call it crazy. There's no need for that. So that's like scenario 1, right? Then scenario 2 is, which is a little bit more complicated, where you want somebody to take an action on your site. So it's no longer just, hey, this is information. This is information, and based off who you are and what you came to this website for, we either want you to call or we want you to submit a form. So that's the bulk of what we work with here at Symphony Advertising, is we want people to give us their information because they need help with something, right? Not me, Symphony Advertising, or us, Symphony Advertising, but the local businesses we're helping. It's usually they're looking for a service. They'll submit their information. That business gets the information. They connect. Our job is done as a web design / marketing company. But anyways, okay. And then there's the more complicated part, which I won't get too deep into, but it's like, it's going to be more your e-commerce, your educational sites where you can do your courses in there. It's going to be, well, there's different entry points. Just think of like Facebook would be like an extreme example. Instagram is an extreme example. Any kind of social networking site is like on the far side of that. So for our intensive purposes, we're going to focus just on scenario 1 and scenario 2. And so scenario 1, here's kind of like, for speaking directly to local service-based businesses, local businesses, if you didn't have a website, or if you had a website as a local business and you don't want to spend too much money on your website, right? Most likely, and I do recommend this, right? If you're just starting off, is like there's something called Bluehost. That's one of the vendors of the many vendors that provide hosting. Just get the lowest amount. If you're not sure if this is going to work out, if this is just a project for you, if this is something you just want to test out to see if it's something you want to keep doing, if it's, you're going to trial it. You're going to give it a trial. It'll cost you anywhere between like $30 to $120 a year, depending on, how many, there's facets, right? Like, how many visitors do you expect? What kind of storage do you need? And then any kind of security you want to add on. This is Bluehost. At this point, we don't even offer that. Like, if you want Bluehost, you can do that. We won't provide that for you because you'll see here in a second. And usually this is the journey of a website / business that gets a new site or begins using their site more either effectively or more seriously. Okay? So, and I'm already thinking of many examples of this. It's like, you should be able to outgrow this type of hosting pretty quick. At this point, I don't see, if you're trying to take your business seriously, if you're looking to grow your business, if you're looking to get customers from an online place, I do not actually see a good reason to get scenario 1, which is the lower end type of hosting. And the reason I say that is because, number 1, it's like not technically good. It's going to get a little, not complicated, but like there are things called shared hosting options, right? So like, imagine, what can we do here? Imagine there's a library, right? And then imagine that it's a regular library. It's just A through Z. So you rent from this library to put your books there, right? But you're not getting your own A section, right? Or your own B section or wherever you can fall in. You're getting a piece of the A section, and then within that piece, you're going to get the Alexander part, and then within a sliver of that Alexander part, you're going to be inserted into like in between the E and the L. And what I mean by this is that there are other people in that library that are going to grab that book. So that's not just reserved for you. That's reserved for anybody who wants to come, and whether they're there for the A or for the X in Alexander, this is a weird example, or that's for the R for Alexander, you are going to be used by multiple different people looking for that book. If I translated that correctly, it means other businesses or other websites are pulling from the same resources that your website is pulling. It's not a big deal when your website, isn't visited often or isn't functioned with often or isn't used often, because, hey, every, 6 days somebody visits the site. Okay, cool. Turn it on, basically, pull the resources. There it is. But hopefully, if your goal is to get as many people to your site, to service as many people and get as many leads and, do business, at some point that becomes not good, because not only are you on a shared space, but like it loads slow. The resources are not there to support what you want it to do. So like imagine if you want a very good video on your site, forget about it. If you want like a bunch of cool, plugins and pictures, it's going to be slow. And so some examples of this scenario that clearly would have benefited from updated what was this episode? 3 reasons why your website hosting matters. Okay, so number 1, okay, what I've seen building sites, and we mainly do marketing, but building sites is just a core part of it because most of the time it's this scenario, is when we get a site that is a legitimate business. I'm talking about their multi-location. They've been in business for 10 years. They have tons of customers, and they're still using like something like Bluehost, something like the lower end of GoDaddy, some kind of platform that's not well known, and they're on it because, oh, hey, I don't want to update my hosting because, I got it at a really good rate and I'm only going to pay, $6 a year to host my site. And while that sounds great and dandy, if it were in fact good hosting, like, just going to give examples without giving context here. Like one example I give you is like this website kept getting hacked over and over and over, and we would fix it, but because it was easy to infiltrate and put, I guess you could call it a virus, it just never fixed, and there was no way you can fix it. You would have to build the site all over again on a different space within that same hosting platform in order to avoid the virus, and even then it could go bad. Here's another good example. At one point, I think before Symphony Advertising, I was managing on a different company's host account, like 8 websites or 12. It was something like that. And it was all built on Bluehost, okay? Bluehost, honestly, like, they're great. Like, if you're looking for something affordable and, like, nothing too crazy, Bluehost is great. I actually recommend them. Good support, but, yeah, there's better things. And at one point, I think it was, like, let's just say it was 12 sites. And, right, like, think about it like this. Like, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. One of the sites got infected or hacked or infiltrated, and basically what happens is they put a piece of code that keeps injecting pieces of code that redirect sites. So if this one, right, let's say the 11th site was infected, but because it was on this shared hosting that all our sites were on at the time, all the sites were infected. All the sites were broken. All the sites had in different ways, but all the sites were not pure. I don't know, that's not a term, but they were not good. They may have not looked like they were infected or hacked, but if you clicked some links, you would find that. And so at the time, you know how you would fix that? You know what we did? We just remade all 12 sites again to combat that, okay? And so that is a nightmare situation, not only for like the person remaking the sites, but imagine the businesses that are relying on those websites to get their scheduling, right? Like people go to those sites. Customers go to their sites to schedule an appointment. Customers go to the site to find their location, to give a call. If they're on this scenario 1 and they're actually supposed to be on scenario 2, oh, well, there's a backend that they wanted to log in to get some piece of information and they can access it. They wanted to make a payment on the website. Guess what? They can't make that payment. And so all of this is destroyed. So like scenario 1 is really, I really think it's only for if you're getting started and you're not sure yet. Like, I want to give it a shot. I don't want to spend too much up front. Let me try this out. But you if you are serious about it, I think you'll outgrow this quick, right? In my opinion, at least from what I've seen. Okay, and as another example of scenario 1 that I had not too long ago, is that on the back end, sometimes if you're editing the site, if you're working on it for search engine optimization, if you're doing SEO on the site, right? And if you're running Google Ads and you're trying to create landing pages and you're trying to rewrite the content and you're trying to update the pictures, if you have bad hosting that's not technically sound, it will take an eternity for it to load. And if there's one thing we all know is that nobody's trying to move slow here. Okay. Like let's say you're paying somebody, whatever, $1,000 to do SEO services for you. And I guess to that person doesn't matter because they're paying for the service, but let's be on the other side where the other person's doing the SEO services. And it's like, hey, we can't do the SEO services because every time we load a page, it takes about 45 seconds. There's about 50 pages. So we're basically waiting. And then every time you save the site, it takes forever to finish processing. And so it basically becomes this like sloth of a site that not only does it load bad on the back end, it loads slow on the front end, meaning customers that go look at the site. And so what you see is like a slow, like it's a slow paint on the site. And it's like, dude, they're gone. Like if you had a potential customer try to give you a call or book a form or book an appointment or make a payment, they're out. Like, hey, this isn't loading. I actually don't really care that much to use them. I'm gonna back out. And so that scenario happens a lot. Okay, that was scenario 2. And okay, one more scenario. Okay, no, that's enough of scenario 1. And yeah, so reasons to use scenario 1, which is the lower end, they're gonna cost you $30 to $120, right? So that's $10 a month roughly. Say 10 to 15 if you add security. By the way, I gotta mention security. So there's web hosting, there's domains, right? Let's talk about cost real quick. Lower end web hosting is going to cost you anywhere between $3 to $10 a month. So you're looking at $30 to $120 a year. And then a domain is always going to be $12 the first year and like $18 the year after that. You have to register it so that people know when they type in symphonyadvertising.com, send it to this IP address. That's the web hosting. Excuse me. And then there's security, which is different from hosting security. I'm talking about SSL certificates. So SSL certificates, sometimes I actually think I don't want to say it's a scam, but like, who's governing this stuff? Like, we have to get these SSL certificates for who? You know what I mean? Like, is it for Google? Who are these people who is taking this money and what are they doing with it? But anyways, you have to get it. So we get it. You don't have to get it, but it's just weird not to have it. Anytime you go to a website and you notice a lock on the top left of the URL of the browser, if there's a lock, that means it's SSL certified, or it has an SSL certificate rather. If it's red and it says not secure, that means there's not an SSL certificate on it. And browsers, what they'll do, for instance, Chrome, is if you don't have an active SSL certificate, it will not push your site. It will say, proceed with caution. Are you sure you want to advance? You might click, yes, I'm sure. And then it'll say, okay, you can proceed here. Or it'll say, we don't think you should proceed. And they don't even give you a link to push forward. So an SSL certificate is not included most of the time with the lower end, more affordable options. Sometimes it is. Like Bluehost includes it. That's why I like them. GoDaddy, they're going to like charge you an additional $60, $70, $80 per year for that certificate. So I just want to include that in the cost. So like you're looking at 120, 200, like $200 to host and have a domain and put an SSL certificate. You need those things. Like absolutely need those things. If you don't have an SSL certificate, then It's like, it's like walking into a barber shop and the person doesn't have the little tag that says I'm certified. I don't think people like that. But you understand what I mean. Like, it's not up to date. It doesn't have a car inspection per se, a passing car inspection per se. So that is this scenario. And then this is like the sweet spot, I think, depending on where you are with your business. But I think for the large majority of businesses, they fit into this bucket. And this bucket is scenario 2, which we've been calling it. And that is like, there's not an actual term for this, but this is like the medium ground of hosting. And to just give you a quick example of why this matters so much. Basically, what happens is when you have more intricate hosting, you have more options with it. So let's just say it's a single site, and here's the things you can do, right? So the domain, same thing. The hosting, basically think about it like whatever this was, they give you like 10 times the amount. So like you have way more storage, way more resources. It's just technically faster. Like I can't get over how much faster it is to do stuff when you have good hosting. Like it's just, it happens. And then the support is like that. Bluehost support's great. We use something called WP Engine. That's even better. And then the security is like insanely better. You don't get hacked, and free SSL certificates. So you're paying more per month, but you're getting more per month. And I think the biggest thing that I can think of is the restore, the daily backup. So good hosting, and they have this with like the GoDaddies and the Bluehost, but it's just different. Like I've tried it, I've tested it. It's not the same. What happens with things like WP Engine is that you can choose your own daily backup, right? So let's say, hey, I'm really happy with my site right now. I'm gonna make a backup file of it. And let's say 6 months from now, I'm like, you know what? I just ruined my site. I don't know what I did. I liked how I had it on whatever today is, January 23rd. I can just go and click a button, and my site will restore to what it was today. And so there's it'll automatically do a backup every day for the last 30 days. So you can always go back at least 30 days if you don't make a manual backup, but you can always do a manual backup. And the amount of times that this has saved like stuff is amazing. Because imagine that you couldn't break anything. Imagine if you could jump from a cliff with no parachute and you fall and you break all your bones, you'd live. But you break all your bones and then you just hit restore and you're back on the cliff. You're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Let me try using an umbrella and jump down. And then you jump down, you break your legs again, and you're like, okay, well that didn't work. And then finally you get a parachute and you're like, okay, this will let me float down diligently. And so you're done. You went through the process of testing without fear of breaking your legs, or knowing that you can unbreak your legs, or restoring yourself back to the version of you that didn't have broken legs. These metaphors are getting weird. And so I think for me in this space that I've seen, that is the biggest part, because there are times like we have clients that are with us and they don't ask for much as far as website maintenance goes, and they're on our platform. And then every now and then they'll say like, hey, you know what? We got this new thing. Can you do this for us? And it will require a new plugin. So it's like, okay, let's put the new plugin. And then that plugin doesn't interact, specifically for WordPress, by the way. I can't talk about the other ones because we don't use the other ones. And let's say they don't interact, like they don't get along. It's complicated. They're like, you know what? This plugin and this piece of code, they don't match. So blah, it dies, right? It doesn't work. And instead of the website being down and everybody freaking out and somebody having to go in there manually and going through the code and finding the errors and fixing them and testing it through the back end of the hosting, instead of doing all that, all you can do is go to wpengine.com, go to restore this website, restore a minute ago, whatever, an hour ago, 2 days ago, and the website's back. And so that is worth what you pay. It's going to cost you anywhere between $25 a month to $75 to $125 a month. It just depends on like what range you are. I think we manage a lot of sites, so it's different for us. But or if you are marketing around, you should ask to see if that marketing company will host for you and what they host on. Because we host all our sites and all our marketing clients on our web, WP Engine, at no additional cost because it's just worth it. Like, it's just a better product. It just performs better. Cannot stress it enough. So I'll give one last example before wrapping this up because we're almost at 30 minutes. So I had this big, you call it a corporate company. It's a corporate company. What they do is they buy other companies in order to grow. And they had to put a little alert on their website. Little, small, 2 sentences. You would think, all right, let me log in, put it in, done, right? Log in. Turns out when you log in, this is not a site we manage, by the way. We're more of consultants in this role. So, log in. All right, let me add this thing. And then you can't log into the WordPress site. There's a critical error because I think they had automatic updates. So at some point, maybe years ago, it crashed. Who knows? And it's not working. And they have to get this update on the website done by 8 p.m. Actually, I don't know what the exact time was, but it was 8 p.m. or whatever, 2 p.m. I don't remember. And everybody's freaking out. Leadership's like, oh my God, what do we do? How do we do this? How do we fix this? Where's our development team? And their development team wasn't available. That's why they called me. And they're like, hey, we need this done in like 2 hours. And so, of course, I'm saying like, hey, what kind of hosting do you have? Not sure. All right. What, can you find out? Let me try and dig around. First of all, just having your username and password is probably ideal for these scenarios or just any scenario. The point is they did not have automatic, and then you can also have automatic plugin updates where, for instance, our WP Engine, every day it checks every single site on our server. It says, hey, are there any updates? Kind of like your phone. Like your phone automatically updates your apps. And for whatever reason, a lot of sites don't do this. Well, you got to pay for it. It's like an added service within this hosting thing. And so there's a lot of plugins that aren't updated. And like, if you don't know what a plugin is, just Google it quick. It's like a think about a car and you put an aftermarket part into it to make it faster, to make it look cooler, to make it sound quieter. It's something like that. That's what you can think about. That's how you can think about it. And a lot of times the plugins won't update. So if you don't update your code, that's basically what it is. A plugin is a piece of code that you just inject, and years go on, and then you have all these different plugins that they don't know each other. They're not friends. They're not even cousins. They're just strangers working together. And then all of a sudden they meet and it turns out, oh, we're not compatible. The thing dies. The website dies. Anyways, in order to fix that, we did find out that they did have something called Pressable, which is also good, was able to restore their site. So they had that. If they didn't have that, out of luck. Be like, I'm out. There's nothing I can do. So we restored the site. I was able to log in. I was able to troubleshoot between like 35 different plugins, like turn off, and figure out, okay, here's the root problem. We'll band-aid this problem, and here's the solution we can do for now. Here it is, boom, done. It was completed. And so my point with this whole thing is, if you're looking to not just have the basic website and you're trying to grow the thing, and you're trying to, like, what makes me laugh too is like, if you're serious about not only your business but your website, like where people visit you 24/7, they have access to your information, they can submit a form, they can become a customer, like that's important. Like, it's kind of like if someone comes to your home, like make sure it's clean, make sure it's nicely arranged, make sure it's organized, make sure it's welcoming and heartwarming and has the information they need, so on and so forth. This is where you want to be. Once you can get to a point, like I understand, like if the business is not there yet, if it's not quite time to do that yet, I understand that. But in my opinion, if you're serious about your hosting, you want to be in scenario 2. Scenario 3, even, that's like more work to get there. But that is today's episode about hosting and 3 reasons why it matters. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, let me know. If there's anything you'd like me to cover, also let me know. Peace.